Walker said she sealed it off. Clearly not.
There's one mystery in Silo that has been quietly following Juliette Nichols since the very first season, yet somehow it has remained almost invisible. It isn't the algorithm. It isn't Bernard's collection of forbidden knowledge. It isn't even the hidden tunnels connecting the silos. It's Walker. More specifically, it's the way Walker has always spoken about the giant digger buried beneath Mechanical. Looking back now, those conversations don't sound like an old engineer talking about abandoned machinery. They sound like someone carefully choosing every word, making sure Juliette learned just enough to satisfy her curiosity, but never enough to keep digging. At first, that felt completely normal. Walker was protecting Juliette from unnecessary danger. After all, the lower levels are unstable, the digger is abandoned, and the deeper anyone travels beneath the silo, the greater the risk becomes. But Season 3 changes the way we see everything beneath our feet. Every episode keeps revealing that the founders didn't leave anything to chance. Every tunnel, every hidden chamber, every forgotten machine was built for a reason. So why should the digger be any different? What if the biggest machine ever constructed inside the silo wasn't abandoned at all? What if it became the one secret Walker spent decades making sure nobody uncovered? The more you think about Walker's life, the stranger that possibility becomes. She's never been an ordinary mechanic. Long before Juliette became the greatest engineer Mechanical had ever seen, Walker already carried that reputation. People didn't just come to her because she could repair broken equipment. They came because she understood machines no one else could explain. Generations of mechanics relied on her knowledge. Entire systems inside the silo continued functioning because Walker knew how to keep them alive. That's why one question refuses to leave my mind. How does someone with that much experience spend an entire lifetime working only a few levels above the largest machine in the history of the silo without ever learning what it was truly built for? The digger isn't hidden inside a maintenance crawlspace. It isn't tucked behind sealed walls where nobody could accidentally discover it. It's enormous. It carved an impossible tunnel through solid rock before coming to a permanent stop beneath Mechanical. Someone designed it. Someone operated it. Someone eventually decided its work was finished. And somehow, we're expected to believe Walker simply accepted that mystery without ever trying to solve it? That explanation becomes harder to believe every time the series reminds us that Walker has always been the most curious engineer in the silo. Then go back and watch those early scenes between Walker and Juliette again, not because they suddenly contain obvious answers, but because they feel completely different now that we know how many secrets have been hidden beneath the silo all along. Walker never reacts like someone discovering something new. She never stares at the digger in disbelief or questions why such an extraordinary machine exists beneath Mechanical. Instead, she speaks about it with quiet familiarity, almost like someone describing an old neighbor everyone stopped talking about years ago. But there's something else hiding inside those conversations. Every time Juliette's curiosity begins moving beyond the machine itself and toward where it might lead, Walker gently redirects her attention somewhere safer. She never forbids Juliette from asking questions. That wouldn't work. She knows Juliette too well. Instead, she gives her enough information to make the mystery seem smaller than it really is. It's such a subtle form of misdirection that most of us never noticed it the first time we watched. Looking back now, though, it almost feels intentional. Walker wasn't hiding the existence of the digger. She was hiding its importance. That's what makes me believe Walker's silence wasn't born out of ignorance. It came from experience. Somewhere in her past, I think Walker followed the same path Juliette would eventually take. Maybe not all the way. Maybe she turned back before reaching whatever waited at the end. But I find it incredibly difficult to believe someone with Walker's personality simply ignored the greatest engineering mystery in the entire silo. This is the woman who spent decades taking apart machines just to understand how they worked. Curiosity defines her. It's one of the reasons she became such an extraordinary mentor. The idea that she suddenly stopped asking questions when confronted with the largest machine she'd ever seen simply doesn't fit the character we've come to know. A much more believable explanation is that she asked those questions years ago, and she found answers she wished she hadn't. That possibility changes the way we see Walker completely. For years, we viewed her as Juliette's guide, the person who always encouraged independent thinking and taught her never to accept simple explanations. But maybe Walker understood something Juliette didn't. Maybe she knew that curiosity always comes with a price inside the silo, George paid that price. Allison paid it. Holston paid it. Bernard spent his entire life trying to keep others from paying it. Walker may have learned that lesson long before any of them. If she discovered evidence that the founders were hiding something beneath Mechanical, she would have faced an impossible choice: tell the truth and risk destroying the fragile stability holding the silo together, or bury that knowledge and protect the people she loved from consequences they couldn't possibly understand. That's not the decision of a coward. That's the decision of someone who has already seen what the truth can do. And that's something Silo keeps returning to over and over again. The show has never suggested that knowledge automatically sets people free. More often than not, knowledge isolates them. The moment someone begins seeing the world as it truly is, they become separated from everyone who still believes the official story. We watched it happen to Allison, we watched it happen to George, we've watched it happen to Juliette. The deeper they dug, the fewer people they could trust. Walker may have reached that same realization years before any of them. Maybe she discovered that the digger wasn't just another forgotten machine. Maybe it was a doorway leading towards something much larger. Something connected to the original construction of the silos, the neighboring underground cities, or even the founders themselves. Whatever she found, it may have convinced her that some truths don't simply change your understanding of the world. They destroy the world you thought you lived in. That's why I don't think the digger was ever the destination. I think it was always meant to distract us. We've spent years asking what the machine was built to do, but the writers keep steering our attention somewhere else. Every season pushes the story deeper underground. First Mechanical, then the hidden chamber beneath it, then the tunnel leads away from the silo. Now the series is introducing entire networks connecting multiple silos, while hinting that even more secrets remain buried beneath the flooded levels. Notice the pattern. Every answer isn't replacing the previous mystery. It's revealing that the previous mystery was only the surface of something much bigger. That makes me wonder if the digger itself was never the secret Walker feared. Maybe she knew that once someone walked past it, there would be no turning back. And I think that's exactly where Walker's story stops being about the past and starts becoming about the future. We've spent years assuming she was simply passing knowledge down to Juliette, preparing the next generation to keep Mechanical running after she was gone. But what if she were doing something much more specific than that? What if Walker wasn't just teaching Juliette how to repair machines? What if she was quietly preparing her to survive a truth that she herself was never able to face? Those are two completely different things. One creates an engineer. The other creates someone capable of changing history. Looking back, Walker never tried to make Juliette into another version of herself. She encouraged her to question everything, to trust her instincts, and to keep searching for answers even when everyone else insisted there weren't any. That's a strange lesson for someone supposedly trying to keep dangerous secrets buried. Unless Walker always knew there would come a day when someone had to continue the journey she couldn't finish. Maybe she wasn't hiding the truth from Juliette forever. Maybe she was waiting until Juliette was finally ready to survive it. The deeper I think about it, the more I believe the digger wasn't abandoned because its job was finished. It was abandoned because someone wanted everyone to believe its job was finished. That's an important distinction. We've accepted the official explanation because it feels logical. The machine carved the silo, stopped working, and was left exactly where it came to rest. End of story. But Silo has repeatedly shown us that the founders never leave something that important exposed without a reason. Every major piece of infrastructure inside these underground cities serves more than one purpose. The cameras aren't just cameras. The pact isn't just a rulebook. The cleaning isn't just a punishment. Every system hides another layer beneath it. So why should the digger be the one exception? What if the machine was never the destination? What if it was only the entrance? The moment you start looking at it that way, the entire chamber beneath Mechanical changes. It no longer feels like the graveyard of an old machine. It feels like the front door to a secret nobody was ever meant to open. That would also explain something that's bothered me ever since Juliette discovered the tunnel leading away from the digger. Think about how carefully the founders designed these silos. They planned for generations of human life underground. They anticipated rebellion, shortages, political instability, and even the psychological effects of isolation over centuries. These weren't people who overlooked details. So if they went to the trouble of constructing enormous tunnels beneath the silos, do we honestly believe they expected no one to ever wonder where they led? Of course not. They understood curiosity better than anyone, which means the tunnel itself may have been part of the deception. They expected someone to find it eventually. What they didn't expect Or perhaps what they desperately hoped would never happen was for someone to keep going. Walker may have been the first person to realize that. She may have followed the path until she understood that every answer only uncovered an even bigger question. And somewhere along that journey, she made the hardest decision of her life. She turned around. That possibility transforms Walker from one of the wisest characters in the series into one of the loneliest. Imagine carrying knowledge that could completely reshape everything your friends, your neighbors, and your family believe about the world, yet knowing that revealing it would almost certainly destroy the peace they've spent their lives trying to preserve. That's not a burden most people could carry, yet Walker has carried it for decades, without asking for recognition, without trying to become a hero, and without ever explaining why certain conversations always seem to end before they reach the most important questions. Suddenly her silence feels less like deception and more like sacrifice. She wasn't protecting the founders. She wasn't protecting Bernard. She was protecting Juliette from becoming the next person consumed by the same obsession that had already claimed George, Allison, and so many others. Walker understood something they didn't. Once you see the truth beneath the silo, you can never go back to the life you had before. But here's the twist I keep coming back to. What if Walker always knew she wouldn't be able to keep that secret forever? Age catches up with everyone, circumstances change. The people controlling the silo become more desperate. Maybe Walker realized long ago that one day someone would have to uncover everything she had spent years trying to hide. And if that day was inevitable, then the only thing she could control was who discovered it. Not Bernard, not Judicial, not the algorithm. Juliette, the one person stubborn enough to keep asking questions, skilled enough to survive beneath the silo, and compassionate enough to use the truth to help people instead of controlling them. Maybe that's why Walker invested so much of herself in Juliette's future. She wasn't simply mentoring the next great engineer. She was preparing the one person capable of finishing a journey she had abandoned decades earlier. Which leads me to what I think could become one of the biggest reveals still waiting in Silo. I don't believe the writers are done with the Digger Void. In fact, I think we've only seen the surface of its importance. Every season has pulled Juliette a little deeper underground, a little closer to the founders, original design, and a little farther away from the history she's been taught her entire life. That journey feels far too deliberate to end with an abandoned machine sitting in a forgotten chamber. There has to be something beyond it. Another tunnel, another vault, another piece of the founders' original plan that has remained hidden for 352 years. And when Juliette finally reaches it, I don't think the biggest surprise will be what she finds. I think the biggest surprise will be realizing that Walker knew all along there was something waiting at the end of that path. Because maybe we've misunderstood Walker from the very beginning. Maybe she never lied because she lacked courage. Maybe she lied because she had already seen what the truth was capable of doing to a person. She understood that some discoveries don't just answer questions. They erase the world you thought you understood and replace it with something far more terrifying. If that's true, then Walker wasn't trying to stop Juliette from finding the truth. She was trying to delay the moment when there would be no way back. And if Season 3 is finally leading Juliette toward whatever lies beyond the Digger Void, then Walker's greatest secret may not be hidden inside another founder file or another forgotten tunnel. It may be the simple fact that she reached the edge of the truth years ago, looked into the darkness, and decided that, for the sake of everyone she loved, some doors were never meant to be opened.